Philadelphia Eagles won Super Bowl 52. The Villanova Wildcats won it all a couple weeks ago. Philadelphia Flyers, you are now on the clock. And if Jason Kelsey was giving an inspirational speech, he would be saying that hungry dogs skate faster. Caleb Weiler is here. I am Adrian Fedju. Flyers, underdogs. Of course they are, against the mighty Pittsburgh Penguins. So we're going to break that series down right now. We're going to talk a little playoffs, talk a little bit of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. You couldn't have said it better myself. Flyers are underdogs. I think anybody is an underdog against the Penguins this year. 2 times Stanley Cup champions the last 2 years, and it's going to be a tough series, but it should be fun. Battle of Pennsylvania is going to be awesome.
There you go. Well, the season series didn't go too hot, and this is a lot different than the 2012 series. The Flyers obviously won that one in 6 games, and they wound up losing to the Devils. So I want you to talk about it. Why is this nothing like that series? It kind of seems self-evident, but we'll talk about it anyway.
Yeah, so back then the Flyers had, you could call it more grit, and that's what they played with. There was fights every game. They had jam, as Lavi would say, and it's a totally different team now. They're not going to be fighting every game. They're going to try to win on skill, but you can't get into a track meet with the Penguins because they will beat you. Like you said, we lost all 4 games this year. 2 in overtime, so in the playoffs, those could go either way because you don't go to 3-on-3, you stay 5-on-5. So the Flyers do have a shot to see what they can do to beat the Penguins. It's going to be really tough, but it's going to be nothing like the 2012 series where they do go ahead and beat them in 6 games. If anything, if the Flyers do happen to win, it'll be in 7.
Looks like Puck is getting excited for the show. He's playing with a toy somewhere in the background.
Yeah, someone's playing with something back there.
So 0-2-2 in the season series, like you explained. What kind of happened in those 4 games? Do you remember?
Yeah, so the 2 games went into overtime, and it was just Sidney Crosby being Sidney Crosby in one game, had a good deflection goal, and otherwise the Flyers just didn't play up to the Penguins. I know they went back and forth in some games with some leads, but they were never able to close them out. Matt Murray has not been great this year. He has, I believe, a .907 save percentage going into the playoffs, which is not good. Similar to Brian Elliott, but overall Matt Murray was injured a lot this year, as well as he played behind Tristan Jarry and Casey DeSmith at some points during the season. So if the Flyers can take advantage of the fact that Matt Murray isn't as good as he was last year and the holes in the Penguins' defense, there's definitely a shot that they have to move forward here.
Yeah, I heard Sidney Crosby is a Taylor Swift fan. I mean, is that guy going to ever hand in his man card?
No, I don't think so, but he should.
Yeah. Puck definitely wants him to hand in his man card. I think I just heard him growl.
Yeah, no, she hates Crosby too.
Nice.
With a name like Puck, you can't.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you briefly brought up Brian Elliott. He won the last 2 games. He's back from his injury. How are you feeling about him heading into the postseason? Obviously, kind of had like a little bit of musical chairs there at the goalie spot. You brought in Peter Mrazek. He was like inconsistent. So now you've got Elliott. He's back. Does he have enough games under his belt?
Yeah, no, I think Elliott will be good in the playoffs. He played somewhat well for the Flames last year, even though they lost to the Ducks in the first round of the playoffs. But he did play pretty well for them, gave them a chance to move forward, but they unfortunately were unable to do so. He played the last 2 games. He won those 2 games, like you said, and Mrazek was never able to get hot. And so I think Elliott's definitely going to be the best bet moving forward into the playoffs. And if he plays as well as he did during the regular season, his stats weren't that great, but he did win a lot of games. And I think that he could be the difference in a series like this against the Penguins.
Yeah, and another difference maker in this series could be, well, the penalty kill. Because when it comes to converting on the penalty, the Penguins are the best since 2013. 26.2 conversion rate while on the power play. That's the best since the 2013 Capitals at 26.8. And then you look at the Flyers end of things, 29 in kill rate, 75.8%. So that's not good.
No, the Flyers are going to live or more than likely die in special teams during this season, during this series. Like you said, they did not have a good penalty kill, 3rd to last out of everybody in the National Hockey League, and you cannot succeed in the playoffs if you continue to kill only 3 out of 4 penalties, unless you take no penalties. So the Flyers are definitely going to be in for a rough ride, seeing as if they can actually stave off the power play for the Penguins. They do score once every 4 power plays, and the Flyers let up a goal once every 4 power plays. So it's not a good matchup for them, especially if they take a lot of penalties. So that's going to be really difficult for the Flyers moving forward. If they have a similar stretch like they did close to the end of the season where they did not take any penalties for 3 games, that's what they're going to have to do here. They're going to have to be really disciplined, and they're going to have to be smart in regards to how they play the puck.
Yeah, you kind of answered one of my questions there, kind of a way how to alleviate some of that, simply just being a little bit more disciplined. But what was so bad about that penalty kill during the season? What were you seeing?
They're just really passive. If you look at a team like the Carolina Hurricanes, they attack on their penalty kill. So they stay in their box, but they move from point to point, down into the corners, on the half wall, and they actually get after the puck carrier. They make decisions quickly, as opposed to the Flyers, who kind of let teams pass the way they want to, and then try to get into the shooting and passing lanes through the middle of the ice, which against the Penguins, that won't work because you have guys like Phil Kessel, Evgeny Malkin, and Sidney Crosby who can snipe from the half wall or get it back to somebody like Chris Letang on the blue line in order to pot that into the net. So the Flyers are going to probably have to change up the way they kill penalties if they want to succeed in this series.
Yeah. Well, one of the things about this team, definitely a lack of experience. But then again, was the playoffs really a reasonable expectation heading into the season? So the fact that they get a playoff series, I already think that in a lot of ways this season has been a success. They make the postseason. You got to play the Penguins, though, so that sucks. But that's going to be great for a lot of these youngsters that are going to get to see some playoff action for the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. I did not expect the Flyers to make the playoffs this season. I thought they were going to be a bubble team again, but eventually miss out on the wild card by 1 to 4 points. And they definitely surpassed my expectations because they finished 3rd in the Metropolitan Division, which is nobody expected them to do that. So they're definitely ahead of schedule in regards to where they want to be. So I would call this season a success. In regards to your other question, the young guys, regardless, this is going to be a great experience for them. If they beat the Penguins and move on to the next round, that's great. But otherwise, they get to see what the intensity is like in the playoffs because it's 100% different than it is in the regular season. So it's really going to be good for guys like Ivan Provorov, Travis Konecny, and Nolan Patrick, who are pretty new to the team, if not rookies, and see what it's like to actually be in a playoff series in the NHL.
Yeah, and out of all those youngsters, who's the one that really needs to step up, you think?
For me, because of the way Dave Haxall has made his lines and Travis Konecny being dropped down to the 3rd line, he's really going to have to learn how to excel in that role in limited minutes. And if he can provide extra additional depth scoring for the Flyers on the 3rd line, he could be a huge difference maker in a 7-game series.
Yeah, and speaking of Dave Haxall, what does he need to do in this series? What kind of things are you looking for from him?
He just has to play his matchups right. The first 2 games are going to be in Pittsburgh, so they'll have final change, and you're probably going to see a lot of Evgeny Malkin or Sidney Crosby against guys like Filppula and guys like Laterra, and that's not going to bode well for the Flyers because they don't have speed or skill, which, unfortunately the Penguins have an abundance of, especially in their top 9 on their offense. If Dave Haxall wants to win, he's going to make sure that he puts out the right guys on his team defensively against the right guys on the Penguins. Our defensive depth isn't that great, especially with the Provorov-Gostisbehere pairing being number 1. So you'll probably see them out a lot against the Crosby line or the Malkin line, and then after that it's going to be a crapshoot.
Yeah. Who do you think could be a potential X factor in the series for the Flyers?
Yeah, out of the obvious in a player like Claude Giroux or Jacob Voracek, for me, a guy who did not excel during the regular season, who we will need to excel in the playoffs if we want to actually make some noise, is going to be Wayne Simmons. He only scored 24 goals this year. I believe he only had 24 assists. And I was saying all year that eventually you're going to have to trade him because he lost his power play 1 spot, and he lost his spot in the top 6. So in addition to that, depth scoring. You have guys like Simmons and Konecny on that 3rd line, and Simmons is going to have to be a huge X factor here, especially at even strength since he's losing out on that power play time.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be a daunting task, but the Flyers will win this series if they do what?
If they play smart. All they have to do is stay out of the penalty box and make sure they stay between the Penguins and the net. That's all they have to do. If they can actually accomplish those things, which is a lot easier said than done, they could win this series.
And will they win this series? Who you got?
No. So I love the Flyers, obviously. We're doing a Flyers show, and it's one of my passions. But as much as I would love to see the Flyers win this series, like we said earlier in the show, it's not 2012. The Flyers aren't going to beat the Penguins to death. They're not going to be fighting players like Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. And the Penguins will probably just end up wasting the Flyers through sheer talent and speed. As much as I would love for the Flyers to win, I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be a 6 or 7 game series, so the Flyers will get some wins. But ultimately, I think the Penguins prevail. But the beating that the Flyers put on them will hopefully slow them down in the second round, so they go home at that point.
Okay, so you got 6 games. That's respectable. 6, 7 games. Not like they get wiped off the mat. Don't get swept. Lose maybe or win maybe 1 game. You got them winning a couple games.
Yeah, well, Philadelphia is a great sports town right now. Like you said in our intro here, the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Nova won their NCAA championship. The Flyers and the Sixers are both in the playoffs. So everybody's really pumped up right now. So if the Flyers do happen to get a win out of the first 2 games and they bring it back home, the Wells Fargo Center is going to be on fire.
Yeah.
So I don't expect the Flyers to win this series, but if they want to, they have to pull a win out of Pittsburgh out of the first 2.
Yeah, I'm with you there. All right, so we'll look at the rest of the matchups in a second. But the first thing I want you to do, I want you to make the case for Claude Giroux to win the Hart Trophy.
Absolutely. So Claude Giroux was second in points this season. He made the transition from center to left wing, which is not easy to do, especially for a 30-year-old. Just phenomenal player. In order to get his team into the playoffs, he scored a hat trick in the last game of the year, which was huge because the Flyers missed the playoffs last year, and they needed that game, and he provided that. He had a 10-game point streak with 19 points to end the season, and he really just did his best in order to get his team into the playoffs, which is what a captain should do. On the flip side of that, you have a player like Taylor Hall, who is also in the discussion, and Nathan MacKinnon. I'll circle back to Taylor Hall, who a lot of people think is going to win the Hart Trophy. He had over 40 points more than the second player, Nico Hischier, on the Devils. I believe Taylor Hall had something like 93 points, and Nico Hischier only had 51. So about a 42-point difference there, somewhere around there. So that's a huge difference. He clearly carried that team into the playoffs. And then Nathan MacKinnon also carried his team into the playoffs. He had 97 points, and he missed a pretty big amount of time with injuries as well. Claude Giroux did score the most amount of points out of those players. He is the captain of his team. But I think what's going to hurt him is he has players like Voracek and like Gostisbehere, who also have had phenomenal seasons this year, as opposed to Taylor Hart. Everybody's calling him that, so it's messed up in my brain in here. Taylor Hall, who just demolished everybody on his team in regards to his points production. So I think Hall probably has the advantage over Giroux, but I personally think that Giroux should win based off his efforts to get the Flyers into the playoffs.
Okay. All right. So next thing we're going to do, I'm in a hockey pool, right? And I'm Mr. Hockey. So I'm not even going to reveal my picks because I don't want anyone to steal from me. But I'm going to have people stealing from you. So you're going to have your picks ready to go, locked and loaded. We're going to look at this first round. Tampa Bay Lightning against the New Jersey Devils. So Lightning, they're the number 1 seed in the East, a year removed from missing out on the playoffs. And I believe they were in the Stanley Cup Finals the year before. The Devils were in the basement last year, and they got the number 1 overall pick. They picked Nico Hischier. Philly's got Nolan Patrick. So it's funny how that worked out. You had the number 1 and number 2 teams in the draft, and now they're in the postseason. Tampa Bay and New Jersey. Who wins this series, and in how many games?
So this is an interesting pick because the Devils actually beat the Lightning 3 times this season. They went 3-0 against the Lightning. But I think in a 7-game series, the Lightning's just going to tear them apart. The Devils have Keith Kincaid in net, who is their backup to start the season, and I just don't see him being able to stop Kucherov, Stamkos, Hedman, Sergachev, Point, McDonough. They just have a ridiculous amount of players. So I'm going to go with Tampa in 5.
Okay. All right, we got a pair of original 6 teams set to square off between Boston and Toronto. So Atlantic number 2, Boston. Atlantic number 3, Toronto. Who wins this one? And how many games?
So this game is series is going to go the distance, 7 games. I'm going to go with the Bruins, though. I think they have a really good shot to make it to the finals this year.
Okay. All right, next one, Capitals and Blue Jackets. So another division title for the Capitals. Can they win a first-round series?
Yeah, well, the Capitals have never had a hard time getting out of the first round. It's always the second round that they can't get past into the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah.
And the Capitals didn't go out and make any big splashy moves. They didn't go after somebody like a Shattenkirk this year. They didn't try to get anybody in to make the team better at the deadline. I think that's actually going to, bode well for them moving forward. So I'm going to go Capitals in 6.
Okay. All right, we obviously did Penguins and Flyers already. Colorado Avalanche. So they're in the playoffs. Nashville, the number 1 seed after making it to the Stanley Cup Finals last year. They were not a number 1 seed last year. Pecorina in net. Who you got in this one?
So I really respect everything that the Avalanche have done this year to get into the playoffs. They won their last game of the season to sneak in, a la Flyers 2010. But the Predators are just too good, and they're 10-0 against the Avalanche in the last 10 games. I think the Avalanche squeaked 1 game out, but Predators in 5.
Okay. All right, next one. We got Winnipeg and Minnesota. 3-1 against the Wild this season are the Jets. So who do you think wins this one?
I really like the Jets. They have a huge amount of talent there with Blake Wheeler, Patrick Laine, Dustin Byfuglien, and a really good supporting cast. I'm going to go Jets in 6.
Okay. And we got a pretty sexy matchup. The Los Angeles Kings against the expansion franchise, the Las Vegas Golden Knights. So how about the Vegas Golden Knights? How about that season that they've had? They had the best record in the league for a while during the year, didn't they? And
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they've kind of tapered off a little bit, but still make the postseason. Do they win this series?
No, they do not. I think the Kings pose a significant problem for the Golden Knights in Jonathan Quick, who is a phenomenal goaltender, and they have great defense anchored by Drew Doughty and guys like Jake Muzzin as well. So I think this is probably, thinking back on it, probably going to be my only upset in the first round is going to be the Kings over the Golden Knights. I think the Golden Knights have a really nice home advantage, so they probably will win 2 games, but I'm going to go Kings in 6.
Okay. Well, that's exactly what I have. So if you agree with Mr. Hockey, then you got a shot.
I wonder why that's exactly what you have.
I don't know why. Anaheim versus San Jose. Who you got?
I think this is going to be one of the toughest, if not the toughest, matchup to pick. Both teams are really good. San Jose went out and acquired Evander Kane, but the Ducks did leapfrog them at the end of the year in order to get home ice advantage for this series. I really like the Ducks. They are missing their number 1 goaltender, but he is practicing again. The Ducks are my second favorite team in the NHL, second to the Flyers. This is really tough. I'm probably going to have to go with Anaheim in 7 just because of the home ice advantage and the amount of playoff experience they have on that team.
Okay. All right, so the next thing I want you to do, I want you to pick who's going to be playing in the finals, well, the conference finals, and then the Stanley Cup finals. So what do you got for that?
All right, so for conference finals, I am seeing the Bruins. I think they're going to edge the Lightning moving forward. And then I think for the West, we're going to see Nashville and oh, man, I don't have a bracket in front of me, so I'm going to assume Nashville and the Ducks are going to be in the Western Conference Final.
That's exactly what I have. Exactly. So who's beating off for the Stanley Cup Finals?
As much as I would like to say the Bruins because of the amount of talent that they have, I think the Predators, after getting to the Stanley Cup Final last year and missing out to the Penguins, they're going to come back with a vengeance. I think the Predators are going to take it home this year.
So Predators over the Bruins.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And that's it. That wraps it up here. You got anything else you want to say?
Go Flyers!
Yes! Yes! Underdogs, baby. This is exactly what we want. Don't we? It's what we want.
And it makes me feel better if they win and I didn't pick them to win. So either way, I win.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a win-win situation. And they're underdogs. Nobody's expecting them to win. Hungry dogs skate faster, as I said in the beginning there.
Yes, they do.
Yeah. All right, so that's Caleb Weiler. I'm Adrian Fedke. We had a guest appearance from Puck. He was on the show for a little bit. I heard him growling every time we brought up Sidney Crosby, so clearly
I've trained her to do that.
Yeah, good. That's awesome. Yes, yes. That's the best training ever from any dog owner in the history of dog owners.
It is. I know. I'm amazing. But I can't take full credit. Adele's the one who trains the dogs, so that's on her.
All right. We're out of here, guys. Take care.
Peace.